You can smell the boulevard and all the cotton candy cigars compete for our...
Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with seasoned singer, guitarist, and composer Billy Brandt. We get into his new 2025 album, The Lucky Hustle, and the Sideshow Shuffle, and his life in the music. His music has working class appeal that radiates masculine charm and chutzpah. He has a voice like dark roasted coffee over a hint of cream. He was raised in Hanover, Massachusetts. He now lives in the Pacific Northwest, a mainstay on the Seattle scene, and performing regularly in clubs all around the city. He is a storyteller, both as a singer and composer, somewhat the tradition of Tom Waits, though with a more refined and nuanced voice. It's quite a story. Enjoy this journey.
Well, it's great to meet you, man. I'm looking forward to getting into the Lucky Hustle and the Sideshow and your life and music. So thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
So before we get into the new album, one of the more momentous events for humanity, and especially for musicians, was about 6 years ago surviving this pandemic. How did you get through that COVID era, and how has it influenced the way that you create and live and deliver music today?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good question. So, yeah, that was a crazy time for everybody. But during that time, I had the opportunity to actually hang out at a studio, which was empty because they were friends of mine. So, as far as the way I created during that time, two of the songs on this album began at that time. So I'm just at the studio, just killing time. There's three people there in this big place, and I got to kind of just kill time during the day, and I was playing music on their piano and whatnot. And so actually the song on here, Bad News, that started during the pandemic because at the studio in their basement they had a pump organ, one of those old pump organs, and so I got to play around on that, and that's what began that song. So in a way, that the pandemic helped create this album. So that was, like I said, the first song I wrote for the album, which became the album. I didn't know I was writing an album at the time. So
for sure. So what was along with the pandemic, what was kind of the overarching vision? What were you going for, and how does it ultimately feel to have this album out?
Well, it feels great to have the album out and done, and now I'm at the point where it's like, okay, because every artist gets close to their music, and so when you're in it, it's kind of like hard to separate yourself. But now that it's out and done, it's easier for me to separate it as something else, as if it's not even me. It's like, oh, it's this album that somebody did. I'm just trying to support it and promote it. So it feels good to have that, because that takes a while to happen. And what was the first part of that question? How does it?
Just the vision, like what was the sound, the assemblage of tunes, the overall effect that you were going for?
Well, I'll go back to that first song. That pump organ at the time was so weird sounding, and it was kind of broken and clicking and clacked and made all sorts of weird noises as I was pumping the pedals. So it sounded like a carnival, right? So that helped. As I was writing the other songs, I just kind of kept that theme in mind, as if an old carnival, an old fair that would come to a town, not necessarily a big circus production, although that's included too. But so that pump organ laid the groundwork for me to just think of the other songs as all part of this carnival or fair theme, So, that was the beginning of it.
Well, it certainly feels like a little bit of what's going on in America today. There's a little bit of a carnival feel that's happening for sure.
Yes. And the carnival, we live in the carnival. We all live.
We are. Well, and that's another part of what I wanted to ask you is, the world that we're in, between immigration and wars and things that have just transpired over the last year, it's created a level of stress for all of us. And I think music and musicians have this way of conveying their music and art that can allow us some comfort. Is that something that you're thinking about as you create and perform and deliver what you do to fans?
Yes, and that works both ways. So not only for other people to get comfort. But me personally, just when you're writing the songs and being creative at home, of course, especially when back then during the pandemic and all along when you're doing the music, it soothes my soul to do it. And then ultimately I have like, okay, this other worldview kind of how it applies to the world's stage or the world's carnival, if you will. So yes, that's in mind.
So ultimately with this album, what are you hoping the listener gets from this?
Good question. What am I hoping I hope the listener just finds something that just enjoys the music and, thinks about a few things, but also just has fun with it. And to think about what you said about this world's carnival that we're all living, this fair, that it's all, we're all along for the ride, basically. And so, yeah, but ultimately just to enjoy it, I guess.
So let me ask you this. Take me back to your beginnings. Where were you born and raised, and how did music become your focal point and become your career?
I was born in Massachusetts, born in Boston, and we moved to the burbs when I was a boy. And music, I was a big hockey player, as they are back there in Massachusetts at the time. So, but I started music because a friend of mine, I always wanted to play, and I remember my mother saying, "Oh, so and so up the street, Mrs. Goddard, she plays by ear," and I was like, "Oh, how does that work?" In my head, I was like, "Oh, well, she has a gift, and I guess we don't. Like, how does that work?" But her son was my friend, and he was like, "No, just get a guitar, and I'll show you some stuff. You can do it. So that was my beginning introduction to the guitar. And from there, I started garage bands and stuff with him and some other friends in the neighborhood. And so in my hockey career, ended at high school, and the music career had begun at that point.
Yeah. What do you remember the first live show you saw that blew you away, that kind of, whether consciously or subconsciously, laid the seeds for the way that you would either approach the stage or your career, or just in general, what charged you?
Good question. And again, I don't know if there was an actual concert that I went to that at first charged me. It's just music on the radio at that time, and obviously there was a lot of rock and roll and classic rock and whatnot at that point. But I'll just say, as far as getting the jazzy stuff, I'll share this, that I remember growing up, jazz was kind of, you didn't really hear it as often on the radio back then, but I did hear it in all those cartoons and stuff growing up, like Louis Prima and all that, and the Jungle Book and things like that. So, and I kind of remember going, "Oh, that's so cool." And then I don't know if you remember the cartoon Tom and Jerry or whatever, but I remember they played the upright bass in the cartoon, and I remember being really turned on by all that stuff, and I was like, huh. But of course on the radio is all, the typical top 40 stuff, which was great, and I love that as well. But those cartoon stuff, that's when I was getting like, I wanted to play that kind of music at times, I was like, oh, so that's how I got into the more jazzy part of things. And I didn't realize at the time that it was from those cartoons and whatnot that I first was exposed to the jazzier end of things.
I think about that sometimes too, with the love that I have for jazz. Like, what were those early seeds, and all of those shows growing up had some level of jazz acumen in it, Yeah,
they did.
Totally did. So was it always going to be music for you? Was there ever any other career aspiration, or was it you were going to get into music?
The music, I just loved when I got into it, and when I started playing guitar, even by myself, it was like, oh man, you can kill, not that I had to kill time, but I had time, and just sit for hours by yourself playing. and singing or whatever. So that was I could, you can do this. But one of the things about not knowing how hard it is, you're like, oh yeah, I can do this stuff. But it's a ton of work, which I didn't realize later. You just do it naturally because you like it and it's fun. So I think it was more that it was fun to do, even by myself as well as with my friends. That I was like, I want to do this, so I'm just going to keep going. Not that like I want a music career. It's just like, I'm going to just keep going.
So what do you? Go ahead.
Well, I never really had another career. The only other part was, like I said, when I was young, I wanted to actually be a hockey player for a long time. But I was, so that was the other thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, I was just going to say, what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day? Why do you love to be a creative?
I love it because it makes me feel good. And then also it is great when you're at a gig and make others feel good, whether they're dancing or smiling or clapping or whatever. That just feels great. And you end up being in these situations where they're watching me play and listening to me play, but I'm doing the same back to them. So often I get to observe people from that point, even though I'm performing and whatnot. I'm watching them. It kind of goes both ways. So I like that part of it too. And then, I've been many gigs where it's a concert and they're paying attention, but I've been in a lot of gigs where I'm background music as well, and they're there, and I'm, like I said, playing background music, but I'm just watching them, so I enjoy that part of it. And just, once again, it just feels good to be creative.
For sure. So, as you dream about being a musician, and as you kind of hatch this idea of doing it, there's ideas of what you think it's going to be like to live this life, and then it happens and you're living it. What's been the difference between the dream and the reality?
The difference is it's a ton of work, and I kind of bump into that sometimes with some friends and fans. Like they come up and they're like, or after a gig, hey, blah blah blah, let's do this, let's whatever. But the work of the gig is actually before the gig and then after the gig, as far as packing up and getting out of it. But there is no, so the difference is it's not all fun and games. It's work before and after. Good work, but other people the fans don't realize that. They think that the rock star has, or the musician has, this easy thing to do when they're done playing, but it's not true. It's just a lot of work. So I've had some friends and fans that conversation more than once. Like, no, I can't do that. I gotta go home and go to bed because there's another gig tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. So what was the other part of having that dream of being a musician is there's stages and venues you hope you play at. What was the first stage or venue you played at where you were like, man, I can't believe this is happening?
Well, there's been many. I've had that feeling many times as you move on up. But there's a place here in Seattle that I love to play called the Triple Door, which is kind of like it's kind of like a Vegas showroom. Did you see that? You know what I recently watched is that I went to the movies and watched that Elvis movie that's out right now where he's in concert in Vegas. And they show it. Anyway, this room in Seattle that I'm talking about looks like that room that he's playing in, with the booths and the seats, and it's that kind of vibe. And that one I really enjoy playing. And when I first played there, I was like, this is, it blew my mind. Because I like those kind of rooms. That old school. I don't know how many it's seats, but anyway, it looks just like in that movie. So, anyway,
right on. Yeah, cool. So let me ask you this: why do you love this art form that we call jazz?
Because I'm going to go back. I've repeated myself a little bit with the word creative, but that feeling just feels good to create and play music that, whether it's a mellow jazz or bebop jazz or grooving thing. It just feels good to create on the spot and make it up, especially with a band. Yeah, that's what I love about it. And and when you're playing with a group of guys, good musicians, they turn you on. It's not necessarily what I'm doing. It's like, wow, just being in it, and you're making music with these guys, and you're in this thing, and they're being creative back to you, and you get turned on by them. So that's fun.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
If you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one show, jazz or otherwise, with your own eyes, where are you going? Who do you want to see?
Wow, you can give me warning with these questions because they're so open-ended. I think two periods that I really like in music is like the 50s, the late 50s, where jazz and R&B and rock and roll began, and also the late 60s when it was still like that rock and roll, but also where jazz and actually where jazz and rock and roll kind of meet, those areas. And it seems to me it was like the late 50s and also the late 60s where that was kind of happening. So I don't know, I'd go back to those periods and I would see anyone who's around.
I love it.
I'm kind of failing on that question. I mean, I don't want to come up with too many names because I have, there's too many to think about, so next time I'll be more prepared.
Yeah, no, you're good, man. You're good. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? Sound like my
Who do you
father
think you are? That's right.
Who do I think I am? I'm. Oh, that's another good one. I think I'm just a working musician who loves performing and loves what he's doing. And I'll leave it there.
I love it. I love it. So if anybody wants to catch you live, pick up the new album, anything else that's going on in your world, where's the best place to go?
Right now I have a couple gigs in Seattle coming up, and that's my neck of the woods. I don't know if you ever make it out this way. So that's where they have to see me. Other than that, they'd have to go online to my website right now. And that's all I got going on right now. It's
Cool.
In this area, in the great Northwest.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I will put all of those links on the show notes. Billy, thank you, sir. I've had a joy listening to the album. Looking forward to profiling it on Neon Jazz. So thank you for taking a minute out, and best of luck with everything, man. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate it, too.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Massachusetts, Seattle, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Billy for his time and cool. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.